Well, that is just a coincidence. On December 13th, 1985, movie theaters across the United States loaded up their film roll and powered up their projectors, and there were patrons that were clamoring through the dark, deftly avoiding mysterious sticky substances on the floor. They sit down and a film begins to play, right? It's a whodunit. It's got all the twists and turns of a classic locked room mystery. And 2 weeks later, it's Christmas Eve. Family members all gather around the table. They fight a little bit, and then they start discussing the film. And suddenly, there are some discrepancies that are popping up in the stories about the ending of this film. I thought it was the communists, says the daughter. No, it was the butler who did it, says the father. What about the woman in the kitchen, screams the mother. Tensions are rising. People are fighting. And suddenly, the lights go out. The video essayist swears frantically, moves to turn them back on, and a blood-curdling scream. Wait. All right, that's enough. Okay, fuck that. I don't actually know what's going on here, to be perfectly honest. I don't have any idea what I'm doing here. I'm pretty sure that I'm supposed to be making a video about Clue. But truth be told, I don't know what the thesis of this video is supposed to be, because it's just like, well, fuck. Hold on. I know what you're thinking, but I promise that was just a coincidence. It's not nearly as weird as it seems. Our house is very old, and it's not like there was a scream or, okay, fuck, fine, I'll do the video. Part 1, the facts. So I took a look through the index cards that came with my mysterious letter, and we have Aristotle, communism, Christian spelled incorrectly, eat, games, value, ACAB, red herring, linguistic nightmares, stupido, also spelled incorrectly, and then we're back at Aristotle. What we don't have, however, is a thesis statement, because the thesis index card just says, fuck you, turn up the gain on your audio. So evidently, someone in this room in this case being representative of the vaguely quantifiable nexus point in which the separate concrete realities of both me filming this video, you watching this video, and our mysterious letter sender all exist at the same time. That room. Someone in that room does not want me to tell you about Clue. Someone in that room stole my thesis statement, which is really cruel because we have not had a thesis on this channel all year. A note for the viewer, Biz has made a total of 3 videos this year. Evidently, we're on our own here, and I guess we're just gonna have to figure it out. So, without further ado, victim, Clue. Clue is first and foremost a board game. In the 1940s, British musician Anthony Pratt was inspired by the many murder mystery parlor games his clients partook in during their private music gigs, like Murder, which I'm sure if you were in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or, attended a party in elementary school, you probably played it at one point. And also the booming popularity of detective fiction helmed by Miss Agatha Christie herself. He teamed up with his wife, Elva, to design a board game that was in a similar style. They presented it to the British game manufacturer Waddington's, who immediately purchases it and provides the trademark name Cluedo, which is a play on words with the Latin word for play being ludo, which I think gives us warrant for games, right? The infamous house design of the game Clue was based on the Tudor Close Hotel in Rottingdean, Brighton, and Hove. Early editions of the game were actually called Murder at Tudor Close. Now, you might be thinking, England, 1940s. Yeah, you'd be correct. World War II puts a damper on the board game manufacturing industry, because World War II puts a damper on everything. People weren't exactly tripping over themselves to produce copies of Battleship, if you know what I mean. They were much more concerned about producing nuclear weapons. So even though Pratt does get the patent for the game in 1947, the game itself does not actually get published in the UK until 1949. Meanwhile, Waddington's American partner, Parker Brothers, licensed the rights to create the American version, where they dropped the dough and just went with Clue, because Americans Americans are far too busy eating French fries and spying on the Russians to ever understand a Latin reference. The magic of Clue or Cluedo compared to other sort of crime-solving mystery games that had been attempted up to that point is really in its simplicity. The whodunit that always ends in a who, a what, and a where. A Mrs. Peacock in the library with the candlestick situation. There's a fixed number of potential who's its, what's its, and where's its, right? That fixed number being 324, but still. So here's kind of how the game works. You start with the cards. There are 36 cards total. 6 characters, 6 weapons, 6 rooms. 3 of them are drawn at random and placed in a little envelope in the middle of the board. 1 person, 1 object, 1 room. It was that person in that room with that object who killed Mr. Body. Mr. Body is the victim of the game. It was technically Mr. Black in the original UK version, but I think everybody is in agreement that Mr. Body with 2 Ds is infinitely funnier. All right, so you put those cards in the middle. The rest of the cards get handed out to everyone else. Players then roll the dice to begin moving their pieces around the board accordingly, and anytime you enter a room, you get the opportunity to posit a theory, deduction about who done it. But it has to include the room that you are in. So if you end up in the billiard room, billiards is just pool, you have to suggest that it was, Colonel Mustard with the revolver in the billiard room. Then Colonel Mustard, wherever he may be on the board, whoever is playing him, has no choice but to come to the billiard room. So that's kind of how you move the pieces around. My cat wants to come in. So you move Colonel Mustard into the billiard room and you say, Colonel Mustard in the billiard room with the revolver. If anybody else who's playing the game has the revolver, then they should kind of sneakily and subtly show the other player that they have it. So you can say hey, broski, you are wrong. It was not Colonel Mustard in the billiard room with the revolver because I have the revolver. Therefore, you now know that the revolver is not in the envelope. It is not the culprit. Hence, you have deduced one less part of the equation. And you just keep doing this until you know, you guys complain about my audio. It's her fault. And you just keep doing this. You keep doing this until someone says, I know what's in there. And they make the guess. And if they're right, they're right. And if they're wrong, they lose. Everybody else gets to keep playing. And they know for a fact that the cards that you guessed are not correct. So it gets a little easier or harder, depending on how you look at it. There are all kinds of fun little secret passages. So there are advantages to playing Mrs. Peacock, who starts close to the conservatory. The conservatory has a secret passageway to the lounge. Mr. Plum starts close to the study. The study has a passageway to the kitchen. The kitchen is notoriously difficult to reach on the board, so it benefits you to play as Mr. Plum. The game is a hit. People love it. And eventually someone is like, let's make a movie. And thus the process begins. Okay, that's probably not exactly how it goes, but that is close enough. Originally, the plan was to make a stage play, and it would be an interactive experience that is extra funny if you are a member of my Patreon and are getting the Patreon only video that's coming with this. But I digress. The stage play doesn't last particularly long. It goes through many, many, many different screenplay stages. So much so that by the time they're actually writing the credits, they don't fully know who wrote the script. At one point, Stephen Sondheim, yes, that one, and Anthony Perkins, who had done the script for The Last of Sheila, they worked on a version of Clue, but eventually they settle on John Landis, who was also the executive producer, who had provided the bulk of the ideas for what eventually became the screenplay. And they co-credited Jonathan Lynn, who directed Michael Jackson's Thriller music video, and also An American Werewolf in London. The cast also went through quite a bit of shuffling around. At one point, Carrie Fisher was supposed to play Mrs. Scarlet, but she went to rehab and just didn't really tell anyone. And she was like, no, they're going to let me out to do the movie, so it's going to be fine. And then the production company was like, no, that's a liability. So long, we don't have time for it. So they shuffled in the woman who was supposed to be playing Mrs. White, Leslie Ann Warren, and she played Mrs. Scarlet, and they brought in Madeline Kahn to play Mrs. White. This is insane to me. If you've seen the movie, this is insane. The idea that anybody else could have played Mrs. Scarlet is bonkers. It's absurd. The idea of anyone else being Mrs. White is bonkers. Absurd. They also had several other actors lined up to play Wadsworth before they settled on that one guy from Annie, Tim Curry. A strong part of me wants to continue pretending that I only know Tim Curry as that one guy from Annie. But in the interest of not being strung up in the village square by the gay community, and out of respect for the fact that Tim Curry has stated that Clue is one of his favorite movies, I will also acknowledge that he was Dr. Frankenfurter in Rocky Horror Picture Show. Rocky Horror Picture Show, by the way, for those of you born after 1998 whose parents had no taste, that is the show that they do in that episode of Glee with the gold shorts and the motorcycle and the Touch Me song. Half-naked students, John Stamos. Get it? Got it? We're all on the same page? Great. Brilliant. Okay, let's go. Other people in Clue, because there are other people in Clue, include Michael McKean, who plays Mr. Green. Eileen Brennan is the phenomenal Mrs. Peacock. Christopher Lloyd plays Professor Plum. Martin Mull is Colonel Mustard. The lead singer of the punk rock band Fear is in it for a hot minute. And so is one of the Hex Girls. So it's a stacked cast, right? They gather this stacked cast, they make the movie, it's phenomenal, it completely flops at the box office. No one cares about it for like 10 years. Suddenly it becomes a cult classic, all the gays are on board. 40 years later, I'm making a video essay about it in my bedroom. Production, check. Plot. What the fuck is the plot of Clue? Okay, so a bunch of people get invited to a mysterious dinner at a mysterious mansion by a mysterious person, and for a mysterious reason, they all go. They show up one by one, two by two, and are each in turn given a code name by the butler at the mansion. The butler, Wadsworth. Their code names, the names of the characters in the board game. Are we getting it? I'm sure you can see where this is going. Colonel Mustard shows up first, then we get Mrs. White. Miss Scarlet's car actually breaks down, so she does a little foot pop moment on the side of the road and catches Professor Plum's attention. He and her then drive together. Meanwhile, Mrs. Peacock arrives, and so does Mr. Green, followed by Scarlet and Plum arriving in the pouring rain. Also, Wadsworth has shit on his shoes. I took the ice out, by the way. Are you happy? Are you happy I'm drinking lukewarm gin lemonade for you? Anyway, they all sit down to this very awkward dinner of monkey's brain soup or some shit, and they're all just like, time to meet your host, Mr. Body. Mr. Body is played by the lead singer of Fear, Leaving, which makes the phrase Mr. Body is leaving hilarious. Also, his lines are like mysteriously dubbed over in the film, and we don't know by who or why.
And did you know you were meeting us?
Oh, yes.
What were you told precisely?
Merely that you were all meeting to discuss our little financial arrangements.
And I watched a documentary about this movie. So Mr. Body shows up and we find out that he did not actually invite them. He is not, in fact, their host. In reality, it was Wadsworth, the butler, who invited them. Why did the butler invite them, you ask? I will tell you. The butler invited them because he is being blackmailed by Mr. Body. I don't think I told you that everyone else is also being blackmailed by Mr. Body. That is why they all showed up. He wants them all to like team up and take down Mr. Body by like singing a song or something. However, Mr. Body is a man who has successfully blackmailed 7 people. He does not fall for this. He is kind of like, haha, fuck you. Look, I got you all presents. And these presents, of course, are a dagger for Mrs. Peacock, a rope for Mrs. White, a wrench for Colonel Mustard, a pipe for Mr. Green, a candlestick for Miss Scarlet, and a revolver for Professor Plum. Murder weapons. He gets them all murder weapons as gifts. And he basically tells them, I got you murder weapons as gifts because I'm going to turn the lights out real quick, and one of you is going to kill Wadsworth for me, and then we can call it even. Flicks the switch, a gun goes off, the lights come back on, and surprise, there's a body on the floor. Double surprise, the body is that of Mr. Body. It's not Wadsworth's body, it's Mr. Body's body. Mr. Body's body is the body on the floor. Got it? Good. which is like a problem. This is a big problem because Wadsworth, having anticipated his plan to go off without a hitch, has already called the police. He's already called the police and told them to show up in 39 minutes. So they have about 39 minutes to figure out who killed Mr. Body before that happens, or else the bus will explode. That's the setup. The film continues. There are several more murders before it all wraps up several more times. Yeah, so this film has multiple endings. If you didn't know that or pick up on that from like the beginning intro bit, there are 3 endings to this film. And when it was originally in theaters, supposedly they gave different endings to different theaters. So if you went to see it in one city, you were going to get ending A. If you went somewhere else, you were going to get ending B. That was the joke at the beginning. Get it? And this is, in fact, the origin story of the Mandela effect and mass hallucinations. However, when it came to like VHS and later DVD releases, they were like, okay, let's just like put them all in. Fine, you caught us. We gaslit all of America in 1985, a time when we were very vulnerable because they just changed the recipe for Coca-Cola. Sorry about it. So you get the 3 endings. It's like, here's what happened. How about this? But here's what really happened. And that's the gist of it. That's the film, that's the setup, and that's the overview. We are going to get into the nitty-gritty with all of the spoilers and everything. So the movie's 40 years old. If you're concerned about spoilers, bootleg it. I don't know what to tell you. It's just, it's a gay little camping trip of a movie. It's an absolute treat. It's such a good time. It's my favorite movie to show people. It is also probably Aristotle's worst nightmare, which is why I think that he is on this list. Suspect Aristotle. The thing that you need to understand about Aristotle is that the man had no chill whatsoever about anything ever. Nothing just was. Everything was a big deal. He was just one of those learned philosophy men fucking around in ancient Greece from like 384 BC to 322 BC. And much like myself, that man could not shut the fuck up to save his life. He was the king of why and had opinions on everything. Public speaking, boning your best friends, how many sides does a triangle have, you name it, he probably wrote some shit about it. And if he didn't, one of his students did. When it comes to like media analysis, the best place to usually start looking for taut flavored clues is probably going to be the Poetics. The Poetics is a treatise. Treatise just means lots of words on one thing. Nowadays, we would call it an Instagram post, like a really long Instagram post, in which Aristotle, a man who has never written a play, breaks down how to write a play. Can you not? Hold for cat. In Narratological Plots and Aristotle's Mythos, Elizabeth Belfour writes of the Poetics that it begins with a clear statement of goals, right? Concerning the poetic art itself and its forms, what sort of power each one has, and how one should organize the plots if poetic composition is going to be good. And, again, of how many and what kinds of parts it consists. And similarly concerning the other things belonging to the same method of inquiry, let us speak beginning according to nature, first from first things. Poetics 1-4-4-7a 8 through 13. Aristotle goes into some specifics, specific plot beats, things that make a good tragedy specifically. However, Aristotle does also offer these sort of structural guidelines for creating a good plot. We don't have time to get into it, but just understand that good for Aristotle just was a lot heavier than it is now, right? Like, it just meant a lot. The idea of something being good, that word has a lot more weight than it does today. So a good plot, Aristotle says, is A, whole, and 2, has magnitude. Whole means that it has a beginning, which by his standards does not necessarily follow anything else, but which does have something that necessarily follows it. So that on media res, Paradise Lost shit we talked about in the last video, no, doesn't work. Doesn't work for him. You can't start in the middle. It has to start with something that you don't need any prior information to understand what's going on. Middle, which is all of the things that necessarily follow the beginning. Things happen. Things happening. Things happening. The middle. and has something that necessarily follows it. The thing that necessarily follows that middle is the end. Singular necessarily follows the middle, but does not necessarily have anything that follows it. Unless, you're writing a sequel, I guess. I don't know. You'd have to ask Aristotle about that. So that's, whole. It has to have all of those things. In order to have magnitude, however, you can't fucking go on and on. Magnitude refers to the size of the plot. It should be no longer or shorter than absolutely necessary. The removal of one element from your plot should dislocate the entire thing. If something is in there, it should be in there because if you take it out, everything else crumbles. That's magnitude. It's confusing because it makes it sound like it should be bigger. It should not be bigger. Magnitude is cutting to the chase, not doing whatever I've been doing on this channel for 2 years. Needless to say, writing, shooting, and cutting together multiple plausible endings back to back at the end of a film, not exactly what he had in mind. It's not really what anyone would call necessary, I think. I don't think it's necessary by anyone's standards. Leon Golden writes that Aristotelian tragedy has as its essence a significant illumination of the pitiable and fearful dimensions of human existence. To achieve this illumination, an action must be presented that is plausible and persuasive in human terms, one that is governed by what Aristotle calls necessity and probability. Because Aristotle was a math nerd. And all of this was less about having a good time at the theater and more about the greater good of humanity. Like I said, man had no chill. Creating a good plot is important for Aristotle because it means that your audience will be able to experience what he calls the proper pleasure of tragedy, which is this cleansing of the emotions, pity and fear. It's catharsis. You're catharting all over the place. You catharted. And catharting those feelings allows you to be a better person because you don't have them anymore, I think, is the point. So it's not really about how to tell a good story as much as it is about how to elicit a specific response from your audience in order to save the world. Aristotle, of course, was talking about tragedy, right? And is Clue a tragedy? No. I guess we could say that Clue flopped because it doesn't adhere to the traditional Aristotelian plot structure. Therefore, it doesn't elicit those feelings of pity and fear. It doesn't give us catharsis. It doesn't make us better people. End of video. However, Clue, while it may have flopped at the box office, is in fact hilarious.
Am I right in thinking there is nobody else in this house? No. Then there is someone else in this house.
No, sorry, I said no meaning yes.
No meaning yes?
He believed that you were all thoroughly un-American.
Are you trying to make me look stupid in front of the other guests?
I don't need any help from me, sir.
That's right.
Much. He had threthrened to kill me in public. Why would he want to kill you in public?
I think she meant he threatened in public to kill her.
Oh. Was that his final word on the matter?
Maybe he was poisoned. Well, you paid the blackmail. How many husbands have you had?
Mine or other women's?
Yours. Nobody, that's what we mean. Mr. Buddy's body, it's gone. All right, I am. I'm shouting. Well, there is still some confusion as to whether or not there's anybody else in this house.
I told you there isn't.
There isn't any confusion or there isn't anybody else.
Either.
What's happening here in Clue that makes it so funny is the dialogue is employing a lot of syntactic ambiguity. For example, the phrase, he told me he was going to kill me in public. Why would he want to kill you in public? No, I think he told her he was going to kill her in public. That is called an amphibole, which is a fallacy. Fallacy is just I'll put the definition for fallacy up here with this little linguistic nightmares index card. So it's a fallacy that relies on ambiguous grammatical structure in order to confuse and mislead its audience, right? In How to Win Every Argument, The Use and Abuse of Logic, Madsen Pre writes, to become a skilled perpetrator of amphiboles, you must acquire a certain nonchalance toward punctuation, especially commas. You must learn to toss off lines such as, I heard cathedral bells tripping through the alleyways, as if it mattered not a whit whether you or the bells were doing the tripping. You should acquire a vocabulary of nouns which can be verbs and grammatical style which easily accommodates misplaced pronouns and confusion over subject and predicate.
Sorry, I said no meaning yes.
No meaning yes?
So what's happening when you use syntactic ambiguity and amphiboles for comedic purposes or not is that someone is manipulating your understanding of your own language. They are using your language against you. The sentence, "the old man, the boat," for English speakers plays directly on the assumption that you, the listener and reader, are going to interpret things a certain way. You're going to interpret old as an adjective, as a description of the man, the old man. And you're going to think, oh, it should say the old man is on the boat, or the old man, '(s), the old man's boat. However, what it really means is the old, as a noun, the old people, man, the verb, control, navigate, do whatever the fuck you do on boats, the boat. Man the sails, that kind of shit. It plays on the fact that you're expecting a certain outcome. It's a plot twist. A little small linguistic plot twist. Tragedies, not particularly big on plot twists, linguistic or otherwise. I mean, Oedipus does have to answer a riddle, but the answer is just Oedipus. So the classical tragedies are imitation, not of human beings, but of actions and of life. That is a quote from the Poetics, 14500 A16, but it's like adjusted. We're talking about a carefully controlled, logical progression of actions governed by necessity and probability, not extremely convoluted dialogue deliberately intended to mislead and confuse you. So I think it's probably safe to say that we are no longer in the realm of tragedy. When working with Clue, we're dealing with something that is a lot less Aristotelian and a lot more Christian. Christy and like Agatha Christie. It's a different genre, okay? That's what I'm getting at here, is that we're working with a different genre than the Aristotelian tragedy. Does that mean I probably didn't need to go into all of that detail about Aristotelian tragedies? Probably. Genre is like a big thing. Oregon State University Associate Professor of Rhetoric, not even going to try that one. Sorry, sir. Describes the genre as typified rhetorical action. Rhetoric, Aristotle. The art of persuasion, how we use words and language and speech to elicit specific responses from our audiences. Typified means that you can like categorize it, right? It is a characteristic or representative of something. So when the professor is talking about typified rhetorical action, what he's talking about are features that repeat again and again over time with few differences, in part because audiences expect certain things to happen or because they want certain kinds of experiences. These are the things that we use to recognize a murder mystery as a murder mystery. Things like red herrings. Things that look like important clues that are not actually important clues and are just there to confuse you and lead you down the wrong path. Someone trying to solve the murder. A locked room, which is exactly what it says it is, except for all the times that it's not. A weapon, which is a weapon. A victim. Secret identities. We'll get into it, but it's basically a whole bunch of completely unnecessary junk thrown into a story that Aristotle would absolutely hate because it clouds up all the action. These types of stories, this genre of the murder mystery whodunit detective situation is just a beast of a different color, right? And we could spend a very long time trying to parse out exactly what constitutes detective fiction, what constitutes crime fiction, where exactly Clue falls in the genre spectrum umbrella thing. We could do what Laura Crone does in her amazing Pink Isle of Crime Fiction video, which is, create your own term that encapsulates everything that you're specifically going to talk about, analyze the reasons for those distinctions in order to effectively communicate our point. But she's much better at this than I am, so we're not going to do that. You're just going to have to keep up. It's, murder, mystery, crime, thriller, detective, fiction, whodunit, story, town. That's where we are. That's what we're dealing with. Because at the end of the day, there is one thing that sort of connects all of the stories we're going to talk about today and all of this kind of crazy genre, subgenre situation. One question that transcends medium, time period, plot structure, characterization. One question to rule them all, and that's who the fuck done it? Changing the outfit breaks the meta continuity of the mystery format. Part 1.2, the who. So we have 6 characters in Clue, right? We have Mrs. Peacock, Mrs. White, Miss Scarlet, Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum, Mr. Green, and then we have the butler, Wadsworth. We also have their host, Mr. Body, and Yvette, the French maid, played by Colleen Camp, and the cook, played by Kelly Nakahara. And that is everybody who is at the house at the start of the film. We will later meet a motorist, just means a dude driving a car, stops to use the phone, a police officer, a singing telegram, and also an evangelist, because I can't make a video without Christianity popping up at some point. And that's like a lot of people to keep track of, especially when at least 7 of them are all in scenes together constantly, because Clue is what we call a locked room mystery, because as you can imagine, the characters are locked in a room. It's room, again, relative term. In Clue, it technically refers to like the entire house mansion thing because Wadsworth locks them in at the beginning, quite literally. But like in Knives Out, the glass onion, it like refers to the whole island. Sometimes it's a boat, a secluded estate, a train, anything like that. Any place that is enclosed where we have like upwards of 6 people and a crime. That's a locked room mystery. And these locked room mysteries typically have way more than like 6 people. We're talking like 8, 15, 12. And so that is actually one of the biggest challenges in trying to adapt these like murder mystery, whodunit, detective crime thriller books into films and TV shows, because if you have 8, 10, 15, 12 people in 180 pages, you don't really have time to go into all of the gory details and all their sordid backstories. You don't get to do a lot of character development. So the characters that these like filmmakers are working with are dull as rocks. Somewhere between like Jeff Bezos and that one guy who's trying to give himself his son's blood. We're talking like dead-eyed robot people. Characters who fit really well into boxes, who seem like they might be interesting, but like are just not. They're very boring. And that is a fact that I learned the hard way, which means I guess that we should probably talk about Agatha Christie at this point. Suspect, Aggie. Agatha Christie, the godmother of what Google calls murder, mystery, detective story, crime fiction thrillers. Dame Agatha Mary Clarissa Christie, Lady Malouin, the most excellent order of the British Empire herself, was born on September 15th, 1890 and died January 12th, 1976. And Girly wrote like it was nobody's business. She wrote a novel for practically every year of her life. It's like 80-something mystery novels. It's insane. She also once like faked her own disappearance and subsequent memory loss just to like have a break. Allegedly. Prolific, right? Infamous, fantastically, hugely larger than life presence of a human type person, thing, woman, writer extraordinaire. That's Agatha Christie, and she has been captivating readers for millennia. So she's famous for these locked room mysteries and these surprise twist endings, including famously Murder on the Orient Express, in which a quirky by 1920s standards private detective Hercule Poirot, whatever. Hercules is trying to solve a murder whilst they are stuck on a stopped train because of an avalanche or some shit. I don't know. I didn't read the book. Don't look at me like that. I tried. I really tried. I've tried several Agatha Christie novels over the years, and especially over the last 3 months of making this video. I mean, over the years that I happen to be learning a lot about this topic that I'm being forced to make a video about. I just can't get into it. They're boring. They're super boring. The characters are boring. They talk too much, which apparently is the point. So, like, obviously it's a me thing, but I didn't read Murder on the Orient Express, but it's fine. because other people have. According to Ina Ray Hark's analysis of conflicting revelatory strategies in Murder on the Orient Express, literary subtleties often become obscurities as they flicker by on screen. Christie's characters are far too flat and the novel too deficient in effect to provide enough dramatic substance to keep a 2-hour film moving. Too much character distracts from the plot. It distracts from the mystery. Instead, we get stock characters. We get the nurse, the maid, the escort, the actress, the professor, the widow, social standings, right? Class types. The challenge of the film version of these whodunits is balancing characters that are interesting and compelling enough to be on screen and like watch for 2 hours without their characterization distracting from the task at hand, which is crime solving. And this is something that I think Clue does very, very well, because first things first, you may have noticed the characters in Clue are not dressed like their board game counterparts. That is because within the Clue universe, the Clueniverse, if you will, all of these people have lived completely separate lives and are mysteriously invited to this dinner because, as we come to find out, their lives are not so separate at all. They are all being blackmailed by the same Mr. Body person. It's only when they arrive at this mysterious dinner mansion thing that they are given these code names and told not to reveal any information about their identity. For the audience, this gives us a way to identify them without actually forcing us to kind of process any information about who these people are. We are completely separated from who these characters are without actually being separated from them as potential murderers. We don't actually officially learn anything about the characters until this far into the movie. And Mrs. Peacock, in the spirit of this dinner table, much like a Gen Xer on an airplane, decides that this is when she should start talking.
Well, someone's got to break the ice, and it might as well be me. I mean, I'm used to being hostess. It's part of my husband's work, and it's always difficult when a group of new friends meet together for the first time to get acquainted.
It's super annoying to everybody else, but very convenient for us because this is how we find out that everybody at this table lives in, works adjacent to, is married to someone who works adjacent to Washington, D.C. Peacock is a senator's wife. Mrs. White is the widow of a nuclear physicist for the Department of Defense and also an illusionist, but he wasn't a very good illusionist. Colonel Mustard is a colonel, I guess. Miss Scarlet doesn't say anything specifically at this time. She just says DC. Professor Plum is a psychiatrist, I think. And Mr. Green also works for some government corporation thing. I don't fucking know. There you go. I'll put the clip in of what he says he does. They all work in Washington.
I work in Washington, too.
If you know the movie or, anything about murder, mystery, crime, fiction, thriller, whodunits, you probably know that that's not the whole truth. Because if the characters in Greek tragedies are models for humanity and vessels for action, necessary plot developments, the characters in the murder, mystery, thriller, crime, whodunit, fiction, novel thing, they are vessels for secrets. Containers of smoked glass which obstructs and distorts recognition of what is being revealed. Anyway, those secrets, especially in the case of Agatha Christie, concern either criminal guilt or social identity. They really have different names, occupations, personal histories, or relationships to the other suspects or the victim than their initial testimony acknowledges. They're cheating on their wife. They lied about their name. They know somebody in the room that they didn't tell you that they knew the first time. They've all got little secrets. But the thing about these secrets is that none of the characters are particularly psychologically affected by these secrets. They're not being torn up inside by the reality of what they've done and the shame that it will bring on their family for generations. They're not keeping it a secret because it's awful. They're keeping it a secret because they don't want to get caught. They're acting out of fear of exposure and potential repercussions for their secret being unsecreted. So what are the characters in Clue keeping secret?
Oh, please, I've never heard anything so ridiculous. I mean, nobody could blackmail me. My life is an open book. I've never done anything wrong.
Well, Mrs. Peacock takes bribes for her husband's vote on government matters. Mrs. White has killed the shit out of her husband's.
He was always a rather stupidly optimistic man. I mean, I'm afraid it came as a great shock to him when he died, but he...
Super killed them, super super killed them.
Husband should be like Kleenex, soft, strong, and disposable.
You lure men to their deaths like a spider with flies.
Flies are where men are most vulnerable.
Right.
Except the illusionist, he disappeared. Miss Scarlet is a madam. She runs a escort service in D.C.
I run a specialized hotel and a telephone service which provide gentlemen with the company of a young lady for a short while.
Oh, yeah?
And Colonel Mustard is one of her clients. We also later find out that Yvette, the French maid, is one of her girls. Professor Plum did the thing with his female patients that you're not supposed to do. And Mr. Green is gay as fuck.
I work for the State Department,
Mr. Green is a homosexual.
and I'm a homosexual.
And he's proud of it, but he knows that his government agency will not be happy with the amount of ass that he is eating. So he is like, I got to keep it on the down low so that I can stay low. Right. And so that's also like what they're being blackmailed with, is those secrets. That's what Mr. Body knew before Mr. Body ended up being the body on the floor. And Wadsworth too. Wadsworth was being blackmailed because he had a wife who killed herself because she was being blackmailed because she had friends that were socialists.
Socialists.
And it's 1950 something. This is not technically speaking true of every single crime, mystery, murder, thriller, whodunit, detective story thing ever written, ever in the history of humanity. But like most of them don't wallow in the psychology of their characters. That is a direct quote from Agatha Christie, by the way. She writes, at the time of the 1914 war, the villain was never the hero. The enemy was always wicked and evil, and the hero was always good. It was crude and simple, and they had not begun to wallow in psychology. Guilty in this sense, in the world of the whodunit murder mystery thing, is more of a state of being rather than a feeling. It is evidence or acknowledgement of previous wrongdoing, not a psychological after effect of bad behavior. And this worked really well for Agatha Christie because you can put in more characters, which gives you more suspects, more possible endings, more opportunities to surprise the reader, and it ends up being sort of cemented into the genre even, after the World Wars, once we all begin really wallowing in the psychology of our characters. Because we do wallow in the psychology of our characters much more today, even, within the genre. Again, I'm going to mention Laura Crone's Pink Isle of Crime Fiction video because it's so fun. It's so good. The Gone Girl, Girl on the Train, that genre, which is like very psychological, right? There's a lot going on in that, alcoholic divorcee solves a cold case thing. Hard-boiled detective fiction is also a thing that exists, and I just think it's really funny to call something hard-boiled because hard-boiled eggs are actually very finicky and like very easy to fuck up. But the term hard-boiled is used to describe sort of tough detective fiction where, the detective usually has like a dead daughter or a dead wife that has like caused him, trauma, and he just needs to solve this one case, and then his dead daughter, dead wife trauma will resolve itself. I think Broadchurch, True Detective, the American version of Broadchurch that we don't talk about. There's got to be more. What else is there? Criminal Minds to a degree. But that is like that's a different end of the spectrum than, things like Clue and Knives Out, right? So we're going to focus over here, okay? If you look at Glass Onion, you see we have the selfish social media mogul, the corrupt politician, the manosphere dude, the CEO, which are the kind of social stereotypes that we have today, right? There's obviously more of a visual element. Clue as well. We get to take in posture and speech patterns and tone. So we get to see Professor Plum be super handsy with Miss Scarlet. And we get to see Colonel Mustard looking very confused all the time. And little things that, give us more information. But the big parts, right, the weight of who these characters are is found in the lengths to which they go to keep their secrets secret. That is where the narrative derives its energy from. That is where the story gets its juice. Tension and suspense and intrigue in these stories comes from how far these characters are willing to go to try and keep their secrets secret from the detective. However, There's no detective in Clue. We don't have a detective. There is no sleuth. No one is sleuthing. There's no mystery gang, Mystery Inc., Mystery Machine, Scooby-Doo, Scooby Gang. No Solve It Squad in sight. No, like, well-dressed, gay-coated man with a southern draw and cute outfits walking in. No Sherlock Holmes waltzing around wreaking havoc on teenagers in the 2010s. None of that. No, instead we just have these people who are like barely people to begin with. A bunch of personified balls of anxiety running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to solve a murder. And I think in order to understand why and how Clue works so well as a detective story without a detective, we need to understand first what the role of the traditional detective is and where it came from. Agatha Christie is from the golden age of crime thriller, whodunit, detective, novel, fiction, story things. She perfected an art that existed before her. So we need to go back a little further and talk not about the godmother of detective fiction, but the founding father. Because that, my friends, is... Eep. Suspect. Edgar Allan Poe. Get it? Eep. Eep. I'm a comedian. Top tier. This is top tier quality content that you are receiving. Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe in 1841 cemented into place the form of the locked room detective murder mystery crime thing, kicking off the genre with the Murder in the Rue Morgue. Murders, plural. And before you say anything, the Fall of House of Usher is going to have to get its own video. Okay, that's just the thing. The community has spoken. I have heard you. I've heard your voices. Me and Mike Flanagan are like this. Okay, we are on the same track all the time, and that show dropped like right after my Succession video on Deals with the Devil dropped. So everybody started commenting thinking that that's what that video was about. Then I suddenly get an influx of comments on my Midnight Mass video about how I should talk about Fall of House of Usher. And I've already written the majority of this video essay by this point, including this whole section on Edgar Allan Poe and talking about Murder in the Rue Morgue. And I thought about putting it in. I thought about trying to talk about it here. I watched one episode and I was like, this is so good. I mean, I knew it was going to be good, but I was like, I can't. It felt wrong to only include a little bit of it. So you have to wait for that. That said, Murder in the Rue Morgue, which I think it's murders. I'm going to keep saying murder. Deal with it. Murders in the Rue Morgue is not particularly important to what we're talking about today. However, while I was researching, I came across this quote about 19th century, psychology and, detective crime fiction that describes, Edgar Allan Poe and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's detectives as hunting antagonists disturbingly like mirror images of themselves. A quote that is infinitely funnier when you know that the antagonist of the Murders in the Rue Morgue is an escaped orangutan. And I felt like you needed to know that, okay? Which means that now I have to go into a brief summary of the Murders in the Rue Morgue, because if I don't, you're all going to leave the video to go Google it, and I don't want you to leave. I have abandonment issues. So the Murder in the Rue Morgue. Unnamed narrator tells us that he is going to fuck with our brains because basically the detective whom he has a very standard 19th century homoerotic friendship relationship with, that guy fucked with his brain when he was telling him the story about this whole crime. So he's going to do the same to us because hurt people hurt people. And so he tells us about these two people that were murdered, right? This young woman's body is found like stuffed in a chimney, and her mother was found decapitated in the courtyard. The apartment is still locked and nothing is stolen. Suspicious. And like nobody gives a shit until the cops arrest some guy. And then Detective Dupin, which I thought was Dupin until I saw Fall of House of Usher. Detective Dupin is like, no. You can't like arrest somebody for this because the only way that somebody could have gotten in is if they scaled the lightning rod and climbed through the window. And Like, who do we know is famous for scaling lightning rods? Anyway, stuff happens. They find out it was an escaped orangutan. 70 years later, Edgar Wallace and Marion Cooper write King Kong. Now, for context, this is 1841. The United States won't write into law any kind of a treatise on what exactly does or does not count as evidence until 1896, okay? German philosopher Ernst Bloch describes the emergence of the detective novel as entirely different from the traditional ingredients of the past. It follows the entrusted pursuit of evidence and the narrated understanding of its meaning. So while I'm not saying that there was no such thing as an evidentiary trial before the 19th century, I am saying that crimes were like super duper not solved the way that they are today before the 19th century. Nobody would have considered a monkey. According to the United States Department of Justice, which is kind of an oxymoron, the need for evidence in a trial is like a uniquely Anglo-American development that became necessary when people started swapping out the church's whole like trial by battle, trial by fire thing for like a trial by jury in like the 13th century. Obviously, however, shit happens. History is historying everywhere. Power changes hands. Colonizers colonize. Henry VIII starts killing his wives. Crusaders crusade. It's a whole thing. We're not doing the history of law. But eventually we get to like 1623, okay? And 1623 in Boston, Massachusetts is a wild place to be, trust me. And the colonists basically decide that all criminal facts and also matters of trespass and debts between man and man should be tried by the verdict of 12 honest men to be impaneled by authority in the form of a jury upon their oath. Make 12 people decide who done it. And then in 1630, John Billington becomes the first man convicted of murder in a jury trial. And he's convicted based on what is described as plain and notorious evidence. I'm not saying that he didn't do it. I'm just saying that evidence in the 1600s basically just meant witness and vibe. And we all know how that one turned out. We're getting off track. Prior to the 19th century, evidence just was not scrutinized the way that it will be later. Even though we have a jury trial, barring like witchfinder major generals, there is not like a person whose job it is to collect and analyze evidence. There was no one person assigned to like catalog everything and tell the story of how it happened the way that detectives do. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, right? Industrialization means that we all have like a shit ton more time on our hands in the 19th century, and everyone is far too thin and frail to be daydreaming about, slaying dragons or anything like that. The days of hand-to-hand combat, as Louisa Nygaard writes, have long since passed. The problems confronting human beings are increasingly those of knowledge and cognition. It's time for a new type of hero. The appropriate hero would seem to be the analyst, the detective, the individual who is able to penetrate deceptive appearances and to cut through reams of contradictory evidence and conflicting testimony to arrive at the truth. Someone who is a loner. Someone who is autistically coded. Someone with extreme attention to detail and an affectation for impractical headwear. Someone who is not particularly interesting. Someone who is not emotionally invested. Someone who is, most importantly, above all, not a fucking cop. Part 1.4, The Done. Suspect, detecting. So, cops are like notoriously bad at their jobs, right? In addition to being the products of a bastard system designed to enslave black men that has spiraled into a heavily funded pseudo-militia where violent, power-hungry individuals can exert their power in whatever way they see fit without any consequences, they're also just like really bad at it. I saw a video like a year ago that has never left my brain. It was like a Ring camera video of a pizza guy who was just standing there trying to deliver a pizza, and suddenly there's a police chase going on behind him, and the cop is running after this guy. He's not gonna catch him, and the pizza guy is like, Oh God. The pizza guy just like sticks his foot out, trips the guy who's being chased, and then the cop is able to run in and arrest him. And the reason that I saw this video was because I unfortunately still have a Facebook account, and it was going around with the caption like, hero pizza guy saves the day. Pizza man assists arrest. Pizza man arrests perpetrator, something like that. And I just like, at first glance, it's fine. But like, a pizza guy should not be better at catching criminals than the cops, right? Like, a pizza guy should not be better at your job than you. And they do this in crime documentaries too, right? Which is bonkers. It is bonkers, okay? It's bonkers the way that they frame true crime documentaries these days. And by these days, I mean all the days. I hope you don't like true crime because I'm about to ruin it for you. I'm about to ruin true crime documentaries for you because once you see this, you will not be able to unsee it. These true crime documentaries, they will spend like 5 episodes, 45 minutes, like a third of the programming, graphically describing the horrific crime in question and how difficult it was for, the lead detective to face, how hard it was for them to, see the graphic pictures, to talk to the grieving families, how, terrifying it was for the community, for the individuals affected. They milk the harrowing emotional experience of everyone involved in these violent crimes for all that it's worth. And then they will, with their full chest, be like, and after 45 years, 29 victims all brutally beaten and dismembered with a chainsaw and dental floss, finally, one man decided to talk to another, and they found a footprint that led them to cracking the case. Like, what? That is insane. That is an insane take to have. That not stopping the crime before it happens means that the people who are supposed to be preventing crime are good at their job. I don't care if you've been in the FBI for 45 years. I'm saying this as a person who has a fucking my favorite murder tattoo that I would like to get covered. Like, I was in true crime. I loved true crime. And I just can't, I can't fathom it anymore. And I just, can you imagine if we did this for any other profession? Can you imagine if a plumber was like, yeah, I spent 12 hours looking at these pipes, turning them on and off and breaking them further and flooding the entire house. But eventually I got it. We would not be making documentaries about that plumber. That would be a bad plumber. You would refuse to pay that plumber. You would write a terrible Yelp review of that plumber. They would not be interviewing that plumber for People magazine and inviting that plumber to give speeches and be on podcasts, okay? Serial killers are not that smart. They have never been that smart. People who commit crimes are not that smart. They have never been that smart. Ted Bundy was not that smart. He escaped jail and immediately got caught multiple times. Not because he was a genius, because nobody was watching him. They are not that good at murdering. That is a lie that you have been told by the cops. With the exception of Ted Kaczynski, these people are not that smart. They're not so smart that you couldn't catch them, okay? Cops are bad at preventing crime, and they are even worse at solving it. DNA, facial recognition, databases, all of these things, that's what solves crimes. Not the police. And for the record, I understand that this is not like the worst thing about the American judicial justice police system, but it is still true and it is relevant to why we are here today. The portrayal of police in these murder mystery, whodunit, crime, thriller, detective fiction things, at least in the United States, is evidence of the fact that the police have never been good at what they do or are supposed to do. The detective in the crime, thriller, murder, mystery, whodunit genre is almost always exclusively a private one. They are not law enforcement. And when they are usually fired for being an alcoholic or having a dead kid, right? If and when police are involved in these stories, when they do make an appearance, it's usually for one of two reasons. One, it's to run in at the end and make the actual arrest. Or two, to act as contrast/foil to the detective's unorthodox methods. They are either there to frustrate the detective with all of their red tape, or their just refusal to listen to the smartest person in the room, who is always the detective. Goldman writes that police, as the official defenders of the status quo, are most often portrayed as bumbling, if not corrupt. Even when the detective hero are themselves police, there are conflicts with less competent underlings or superiors, or the police hero himself is somewhat corrupt and incompetent. There are a couple of police officers in Clue. Collectively, they tick both of these boxes. So in each of the endings, they do sort of bust in to make the final arrest. But there is a police officer who shows up and ends up being one of the murder victims. Before his ultimate demise, however, he is portrayed as a bumbling idiot. He is completely unsuspicious of the goings-on, falls easily for this moment where all of the characters pretend to be making out with dead bodies. He is very dumb, very naive, and gets killed. And that's like his whole thing. If you've seen the movie, you know that there is, in fact, another cop situation going on, and we will get there, but for now, it's the methods that the private detectives use that differentiate them from the police, right? They can tell by the mud on someone's shoes which part of London they are walking through and differentiate the scent and style of tobaccos. That's from Ernest Bloch, A Philosophical View of the Detective Novel. They use small incidental signs to piece together the truth, which means that these books often have a lot of random trivia in them because the detectives just like know shit. Like they just know what the different smells of different cigar brands are. Like they just know. They know like how deep a pool is. I don't fucking know. They know like random shit. These methods and facts and knowledge, however, either go sort of completely unnoticed by the police or outwardly rejected by them. The detective can be looking at the sort of trivial pipe right in front of the police officer who sort of dismisses the action completely and is like, that's not important. And it turns out that the pipe can only be bought in one place at one time by one person in one room, and boom, murder solved. That's kind of what happens in Murder at Rue Morgue is they arrest this guy and Dupin is like, that's not possible. And they're like, meh, we're just ignoring the fact that the window was unlocked and no one could have scaled that except for a monkey. Our detectives, however, are the Goldilocks of lawbreaking. They aren't beholden to things like warrants or, fruit of the poisonous tree or anything like that. They can do whatever they want. Both Poirot and Sherlock Holmes let perpetrators walk at one point without arresting them. The new type of detective offers protection for the rashly accused victims of the routine of police and thus embodies the characteristics which, according to Radbrook, should distinguish the jurist above all: deliberation. Their attention to detail, willingness to focus on the little things, those small, tiny details, highlight their commitment to truth, presenting a virtuous, independent person acting as a strong contrast to the routine police. The point of the detective, evidently, is to contrast the police, to be unprofessional, to be unofficial in order to be effective. So it stands to reason that while most of the detectives are white men with funny hats and eidetic memories or alcoholic cupcake shop owners, anyone can technically function as the detective in a whodunit.
This is getting serious.
In detective fiction and the historical narrative, Ellen O'Gorman writes that the detective seeks a solution to a mystery or mysteries. The solution is arrived at through the scrutiny of material evidence and careful questioning of witnesses. In short, through a process of retracing and recovering the past. The detective is bound by an obligation beyond that to any human individual. An obligation to truth. Dupin tells us as much, or rather, the narrator describes as much in The Murder at Rue Morgue, that Dupin's ultimate objective is to only the truth. Which is fine. Except, what is truth? Suspect. Truth itself. Truth is a weird and interesting concept, especially in philosophy, because it is both like the most important objective, but also like no one is concerned about it at all. We want to search the truth, but at the same time, like if we find it, then philosophy is over. And I feel like most people like having a job in philosophy. It's very hard to get. So we want truth, but a very specific kind of truth, that like doesn't exist. And I think we all know that it doesn't exist. But like intellectual wild goose chases are the point of philosophy. That is the official encyclopedic definition of philosophy, wild intellectual goose chases. You don't need to look it up, trust me. So when it comes to figuring out what is true, there's like a lot going on. And I'm trying to make these videos more concise. So first you have to decide what it is you mean when you say true. What does truth mean? And then you have to decide how you find that truth. You have to figure that out. And then you have to figure out how you prove that the truth that you have found is in fact the truth that you decided you were looking for in the beginning. Which is difficult because how you find the truth and how you prove the truth are not always the same thing. And this is like big for epistemology, which I was really into in school. It's the study of knowledge and how we know what we know or what we think we know. Because typically when we say that we know something, what we mean is that we believe that thing to be true. And so you have to justify that belief. Why do you believe that the sky is blue? Because you can see it. And trust me, not everyone is keen on taking that as a justifiable answer. So when Dupin says that his obligation is to truth, what he is saying is that his only objective in solving the murder is not necessarily to bring justice for the victims. It's not for fame and glory. It's not because it's the honorable right thing to do. It's because no one knows what happened in that locked room. Therefore, no one knows the truth. And his only obligation is to uncovering that truth. Hands off everything else, you know? Hello? The characters in Clue, however, if we remember, only have an obligation to themselves. So whereas the detective, the sort of emotionally detached Sherlock, Dupin, Poirot, traditional detective, is not like emotionally involved in the story at all, the characters in Clue are like very much involved. Remember, their ultimate goal as like stock sort of vessels for secrets is to keep those secrets. So that's their first objective. Their only objective is to get out of there with all of their secrets intact. The only reason that they have to try and solve this murder is because the cops are going to be there in 39 minutes and none of them trust each other enough to walk away and never say anything again. They don't actually care about what's true, but philosophers definitely do. Philosophers spend a lot of time painstakingly trying to explain how and why they think they know something to be true. And the most common way that they do this is through a logical argument. I promise this is going to be important. Logical argument, premise, conclusion, right? If, then, therefore. So, for example, in Clue, Wadsworth argues that monkey's brains is a Cantonese delicacy not commonly found in Washington, D.C., right? That is the first premise. That is the law. That is a thing that he believes to be true. Second premise, Mrs. Peacock says that the recipe she is eating is her favorite. That is the case. That's the second premise example. Therefore, 3, Mrs. Peacock has had this recipe before. That is the conclusion. And that conclusion sort of leads him to decide that she must have killed the cook. There are a lot of assumptions being made here and other premises sort of being added into this, like whether or not the cook is the only person to have ever made that recipe. But broad strokes, more or less, this is the deduction. Deduction, one of the many things that Stephen Moffat has taken from me. Deductive reasoning. That is what Wadsworth is using here, and deductive reasoning is like the best kind of reasoning. As far as philosophers are concerned, deduction is how you come up with the truest true answer that has ever trued in its entire truity. It is how you find the most super duper best super fact concrete reality thing ever. It's how you figure out all the a priori shit. A priori is just a fancy way of saying what comes first. It means a lot of different things in different contexts, but for the most part, what came before will suffice. Say, for example, you are standing in front of a tree because philosophers fucking love trees. You're trying to figure out if this tree has fruit or not on it. Just pretend that you can't see the top because of clouds or whatever. Just roll with it. When you are asking this question, does the tree have fruit? It already does or doesn't. That is not going to change in the amount of time it takes you to guess. That is an a priori fact. It's already happened. You just don't know the outcome. So you are trying to figure out this a priori fact without climbing a fucking tree, because that is a waste of time. So you put together the following logical argument. You say, 1, all trees bear fruit. 2, I am standing in front of a tree and I am of, sound mind and body and all that. 3, therefore, I can conclude that this tree in front of me has fruit. However, you may already be typing a comment about the fact that not all trees bear fruit. That's a silly little assumption for you to make. And therefore, I would tell you that yes, you are correct. We don't know that all trees bear fruit. Not all trees bear fruit. Therefore, this argument is valid, but it is not sound. We don't really need to be going into all of this, do we? The argument is valid because it makes sense within itself. It is not sound because it doesn't make sense within the world. If you wanted to make it sound, you would have to prove that first premise. You would have to prove that all trees bear fruit. Now, in reality, this would be very easy to disprove because I live in Philadelphia and there are many a tree here that has nothing to offer me. However, let's say every tree that you check has fruit. You just keep checking trees and every single fucking tree is just like apples for days, right? You're just like drowning in apple juice, living your best life, checking every tree on the face of the earth. That still wouldn't, technically speaking, be enough because you would have to also check all of the trees that have not grown yet, which you can't do. We can't check the trees of tomorrow. So you would have to use inductive reasoning to say that every single tree that I have encountered on this planet has fruit. I ran out of phone space, pardon the angle change, but therefore all trees most likely will bear fruit. And you would be reasoning a posteriori. What comes after? The will most likely part of that sentence, predicting the future. It's a whole thing. You don't need to know about it. It's not at all relevant to what we're talking about. Anyway, murder, mystery, thriller, whodunit stories aren't concerned with a posteriori because no one is concerned with a posteriori. They are concerned with an a priori fact. You can't solve a murder that hasn't happened yet, at least not in this genre. One of the central characteristics of these murder, mystery, crime, thriller, whodunit story, novel things is, in addition to the sort of hunt for clues and the unmasking of the guilty party, is the fact that the events of the actual crime, right? What happened in the Rue Morgue, for example, or what happened when the lights went out in Clue, they are being wrestled from what Ernst Bloch calls their pre-narrative state. Pre-narrative doesn't necessarily mean before the film or novel starts, so much as it means before the main narrative of the film or the novel starts. And while there are some cases like The Last of Sheila or Knives Out, Glass Onion, where the murder does actually happen way before we meet anybody, for the most part, it usually occurs right near the beginning. It's usually the second thing that kind of happens. So for the most part, this a priori event, this pre-narrative thing that came before, really just means that we weren't there for it, right? It happened when the lights were out. It happened in another room. It happened somewhere that we as the, reader or audience or watcher were not privy to, right? And therefore it is a blank spot that we all have to now fill in. And that is, again, where the narrative picks up, where the story really begins, when all of these characters have to start keeping their secrets because there is a detective or a pseudo-detective or a detective-like figure pressing them to find out what happened. They're trying to figure out if the tree has fruit. And to effectively do this, whodunits usually employ a double narrative. This means that there is one narrative, right, that is unfolding at the same time as another narrative, right? One is the story of the sleuth or the detective investigating, the story of the characters trying to keep their secrets. That's the main narrative. And then you also have, at the same time, the narrative, the story of what actually happened when the lights went out. That story is the one that the detective is building in the main narrative. And it's unique and interesting because it's not like a story within a story, right? We're not pausing and, figuratively or literally time traveling back to reveal what happened. It's not Wuthering Heights. Like we're not hearing the nurse tell the story that Catherine told that blah, 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 blah. Like we're not going that far down into cognitive reality or whatever. It's not a story within a story so much as it is the story of someone telling a story. Which does not sound like a very effective storytelling device. Can you imagine if you were watching Barbie as Rapunzel and instead of getting to go back and dive into the world of Barbie as Rapunzel, you just had to listen to modern Barbie tell that story verbally to the little girl in the beginning, and then the little purple dragon puts her foot through the floor, and then they're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And then later the big dragon yells at the little dragon for that, and then Rapunzel finds these raspberries, I think, or they might have been strawberries, and she uses them as paint. That would not be nearly as fun. However, if you would like me to give you a recap of Barbie as Rapunzel by memory, I am more than happy to do so. Anyway, right, look, it's all about going back and piecing together an event that happened beforehand. Bloch writes, in the detective novel, the story arrives at the scene of the corpse. Contrast with Raskolnikov, which is from Crime and Punishment, who we see murder the pawnbroker, or we see Albrechts rob the gold. I don't know what that's from. If, however, new murders occur in the course of the detective story, they constitute yet another black mark, often hampering the resolution of the case. So basically, we have this already concealed truth, this initial murder. And as the story progresses, we are running around, retracing our steps, trying to piece together what that truth is. And if bodies start dropping left and right, that makes the narrative that we are trying to piece together increasingly more complex. We are constantly trying to outrun the story that we are telling. And the additional murders become not only additional crimes, but additional evidence. And so we get to see all of these characters in Clue who are already kind of stressed and overwhelmed by the pressure of having to be the detective and the suspect, then also realize that they are potential victims and panic, as you would. And so they sort of, at this point, all lock all of the murder weapons away in like a chest, armoire, cabinet, the thing from Beauty and the Beast. They lock it away in there. Then they break off to search the house in pairs because A, they can watch each other, and B, if one of them ends up dead, then they definitely know who the killer is. Seems like a decent risk to take. So the truth goes from being just this a priori thing, this thing that happened when the lights were out when Mr. Body was killed, to this a posteriori thing of who is going to be next, who could be killed next, who could be doing the murdering again. And if we're treating a priori truth as something that can be known, which is a debate all unto itself, and we assume that deduction is in fact a way to successfully get to this answer, to find the truest true of all truths, that is the central crime that, as Goldman says, must always be reconstructed from clues uncovered in the ongoing action, that first narrative. And then we add on top of that this search for who could be doing the killing, who could be the next victim. We add on this search for an a posteriori truth. And a posteriori is inductive reasoning. It's not deductive reasoning. It's not 100% knowable the way that a priori is. Then the truth in Clue is both knowable because it's a priori and unknowable because it's a posteriori who's going to be next. It makes this knowable truth completely unknowable, you know? If this is confusing, that's fine. I'm also confused. The idea that an escaped orangutan killed 2 women in 1841 is like insane. That's not something that anybody would have ever guessed. And like Edgar and I were having a moment in 1841, so I don't know how people responded at the time, but I feel like it must have been a bit frustrating. And Edgar Allen Poe is an interesting example because he was, very cynical about everything. So he probably delighted in the fact that this was like a very big deception and frustrating for his audience. But because this cements the genre, because this is, the more or less agreed upon beginning of detective murder mystery, whodunit, locked rooms, crime thriller stories, it became a staple. And deception, this thing that is traditionally like not very fun, now becomes this vital tool in this kind of storytelling. Not just mystery, not just suspense, but like outright lies. Lane Cooper writes that an excess of delight occurs when the regular advance from an antecedent to consequence brings a sudden addition to our knowledge, when, by a rapid, unlabored logical inference, the desire to know the truth is satisfied. In order to really experience that satisfaction, we have to go down several incorrect paths. We have to be deceived. We have to be played with in order to allow that desire for truth to build. The same way that Agatha Christie, not wallowing in psychology as a result of the world that she lived in, helped unlock this element of detective fiction going forward. That sort of like desire to fuck with people that Poe had helped create this method of manufacturing suspense. And people trying to recreate that is how we get all of these tropes, right? Clue plays on all of these, right? Someone who everyone thinks is dead is not dead, Mr. Body. Someone who is missing turns up dead, also Mr. Body.
Why would anyone want to kill him twice?
Seems so unnecessary.
The most likely suspect always is the first victim.
Look out!
That one small thing that the detective thinks is a little odd turns out to be really important later.
This is one of my favorite recipes.
I know, madam.
The DC thing, the government, nuclear physicists, communism, red herrings, right? Those things that seem like they're going to be important, but really are just there to pad the video time and distract you to keep that one mysterious pre-narrative crime hidden until exactly the right moment. I mean, that whole Aristotle bit, like, red herring, right? Not at all relevant. It's not like Oedipus was running around trying to solve a murder that happened before the story started. Shit. Okay, so maybe he was like a little bit, but hear me out. Suspect, Oedipus Redux. If I had known that Oedipus was going to come up again, I would have saved my index cards from the last time because It's occurring to me that maybe stupido isn't misspelled. It's just Oedipus backwards. Whatever. Quick rundown. If you didn't watch my Succession video, which you should because it's my favorite. So Oedipus is king of Thebes, right? Oedipus is king of Thebes and there is a plague, but we're not worried about that because we are on our way and we are going to go see a prophet, right? Oedipus goes to a prophet. He asks the prophet, how do I get rid of this plague that is mysteriously similar to the plague that disappeared as soon as I showed up to town 20 years ago? The prophet is like, you, sir, have to solve the murder of the previous king because the previous king was murdered at a crossroads, like right before Oedipus showed up in town and married his wife, which wouldn't be a problem unless you are Oedipus, who happened to kill a guy at a crossroads right before you rolled up into town and married the king's wife. Oedipus is like, shit, that might have been me. What do you know? Like, it was womp womp. He hobbles off into the distance with his incest babies. That's the whole thing. So, like, technically speaking, yes, I guess it does center around uncovering a narrative that happened before the story started, which, according to Goldman, is one of the central elements of the murder mystery, crime thriller, whodunit, novel fiction thing. And so if we really, really wanted to, we could, I suppose, map the story of Oedipus onto the bones of a whodunit, structurally speaking. However, No one is fact-checking Oedipus, okay? No one is running DNA tests on that man's evidence. And you know what? Not gonna lie to you, doesn't make sense. There are holes in that man's story. It's found out pretty early on that, like, the story of Laius's death, Laius is the king, is, like, quite similar, in fact, to the story of how Oedipus arrived at the kingdom to marry his wife. It's also uncovered that, like, Oedipus was only running away from home because he found out that he was destined to kill his father and marry his mother, who were these farmer lady men people that he liked, which is a very specific prophecy that was also given to Laius and Jocasta when they had their first baby. The prophet was like, that baby is going to kill you and marry you. And they sent that baby off to be... We put all of this together in like the third or fourth scene of the play. So why doesn't it end there? Why does Oedipus then go out to investigate this highly specific set of circumstances? Why does he even bother? I'll tell you, it's because he thinks that there is a chance that he didn't do it. Oh, how many pages do I have left? I think I just have to power through. The problem here is that the witness is this shepherd who claims to have survived the attack on Laius. He was there. He said some guy tried to kill everybody. He got away. Oedipus, however, left no survivors at the crossroads before he came to Thebes, which means that the math does not add up. And Sophocles was not an idiot. Karl Hashberger writes in Who Killed Laius, the clearest evidence that Sophocles was aware of the difference in the murder stories is that he has Oedipus himself bring them up and comment on them, pushing them to the center of our attention, about halfway through the play. And those discrepancies lead us to at least momentarily believe that maybe, possibly, Oedipus didn't do it. Thus, Oedipus discovers, or thinks he discovers, all sorts of things, true or untrue. That Creon is plotting against him, that Tiresias is basely involved in the plot, that he, the hero, could not have killed his father and married his mother, fulfilling the oracle, since he discovers that Polybus and Merope, the people he thinks are his parents, are dead. That Polybus and Merope are not, after all, his parents, that the man he killed at the crossroads was his father, and the queen he subsequently married was his mother, and that Tiresias has said he himself, Oedipus, is the accursed defiler of the land whom he has been seeking. He discovers the answer to the riddle of the Sphinx, which is Oedipus, but the discrepancy between the stories of what exactly happened at the crossroads when Laius was killed is never really resolved. And as a result, Oedipus probably wouldn't hold up in a modern day criminal trial. Because that discrepancy could and probably would qualify as reasonable doubt, at least in theory, because the story is not congruent. If everything doesn't add up, then we didn't really solve anything. If there is any reasonable doubt, we have failed our obligation to truth. And I find this really interesting because if we fast forward to like the big sort of classical tragedy revival that happens, with Billy Shakes, we start to see in real time this like reassessment of the importance of truth in narrative. Right? We start to see it sort of become part of the conversation at the very least, because it doesn't fucking matter in Oedipus, like how we know it's the truth. It just matters that it is. Like we know. But then we look at something like Othello, where basically like Othello's got like a shitty best friend who steals his wife's like handkerchief and uses it to convince Othello that he slept with his wife or somebody else slept with his wife, which then prompts Othello to kill his wife. And then Othello feels really bad about it. And then I think he kills himself, if I remember correctly. Desdemona did not cheat on Othello. She was not unfaithful. And the fact that he kills her based on that false evidence, kills her for a crime that she did not commit, is like a big deal. Like, sure, Othello didn't know that the evidence was false, but like that's just because he didn't check. Like he didn't check hard enough, and he didn't believe her when she was like, I don't know, I lost my handkerchief a while ago. Oh. And the handkerchief is like a big fucking deal in that play. It's like a whole thing. It's the like physical material evidence is like the thing of the play. They talk about it all the time. There is symbolism, the whole shebang, and it's a false piece of evidence. Still a tragedy, just like, Oedipus, only there is a greater emphasis on not only like what the truth is, but how you know that it is the truth, because of the moral implications of the actions that are taken in the name of that truth. Hamlet killed the wrong guy that one time, and it ruined everything. Taking things at face value and not investigating further leads to great moral failures. Unnecessary suicides, more murder, kissing your mother, even like the comedies, the cross-dressing ones. Taking things at face value leads to consequences, mostly hijinks, but like consequential hijinks nonetheless, right? Sophocles had to know that there were holes in the Oedipus story, unless it is a translation thing and we are all overthinking everything, in which case, fine. That's a very fair assessment. I may have been known to overthink a thing or two. Or Oedipus really is supposed to be a murder mystery, and we are supposed to be questioning the validity of everything presented in order to reflect on our own susceptibility to false testimony. Or it just like literally wasn't important. It's not any more or less valuable for Oedipus to have discovered the truth and moved from ignorance into knowledge via the eyewitness testimony of some guy than it would be if there had been like DNA technology involved in proving this truth. The importance and the sort of value of that evidence is the same, because the truth remains the same. The prophecy was already given. Oedipus already killed his father and married his mother. All of this stuff is a priori. It happened already. It's not changeable. And so, yeah, the most logical, rational, necessary, probable explanation is not that there were two babies who were prophesized to kill their father and marry their mothers, and not that there were two murders at crossroads completely unrelated to each other around the same time, is not that Oedipus happened to show up right after the king died and there was a plague that disappeared just like the plague that he's trying to get rid of now. No, the most rational explanation is that it was just Oedipus. Just one answer to the riddle, one baby, one truth. All right, look, I know that we are veering like dangerously close to Bama Rush documentary levels of tangentry. But the point here is that Oedipus is not made worse by the fact that his evidence doesn't add up. It's still just as good. It does not affect the catharsis experienced by the audience, the effect that the play is going for. Whereas if the evidence in a murder mystery, whodunit, crime thriller, detective book, comic flip story does not make sense and does not tell a congruent narrative story within a story, then it's a bad murder mystery, whodunit, crime thriller, drama, detective thing. Which is a problem because people already think the genre is trash to begin with. Oh, is that a sharp increase in quality? Or are you just happy to see me? Part 2, the evidence.
Don't touch it! That's evidence.
Well, not for us. We have to find out who did this. We can't take fingerprints.
Any examination of the crime genre soon reveals the impossibility of maintaining a clear division between guilt and innocence, law and the criminal. Gilplain. Smells like an ethics section to me. Suspect. The ethics. Buckle up. Let's start at the bottom. There's a body in the library, a body in the study, a body in the kitchen, a body in a place where a body should not be. 99.9% of the time, that is bad. Murder is wrong, right? Except for when it's not. But for the most part, it's wrong. So if you're seeing a body in a place where a body should not be, it's safe to assume that something nefarious is going or has gone on. Julia Kristeva says in 1982's Powers of Horror that a corpse is the utmost abjection. Abjection just being like a thing that we all hate. But we hate it specifically because it fucks with our head, right? It's a thing that we hate because it makes us very uncomfy. It disturbs identity, system, and order. Troy Bolton wanting to be in a musical was fundamentally disruptive to Corbin Blue's psyche. It made him question the nature of his existence and the truth of the world around him. Stick to the status quo. abjection. And Kristeva uses the example of a corpse as the utmost objection because it is death infecting life itself. So it is a sharp reminder that we are mortal and we are going to die, turn into ugly, dead, lifeless sacks of meat. It reminds us of our own feeble mortality. It triggers a cognitive dissonance. We talked about cognitive dissonance a lot in my Midnight Mass video, where two conflicting realities and beliefs are sort of at war in your brain, and this is not fun. Really not fun, and like an inherently stressful and unsettling experience psychologically. Except, of course, for when it's not.
Everything all right?
Yep, 2 corpses, everything's fine.
Because the detectives in the murder mystery whodunit genre, novel, fiction type things, they don't wallow in psychology, right? The initial crime, the first murder, either happens literally before we even get there, or it happens so quickly that it fails to evoke any pity for the victim. As Goldman writes, it will fail to evoke moral outrage as opposed to interest in the narrative. These whodunits take the social status quo, the clean and pristine box that is society as it stands, and they shove a fucking body in it. Then they force you to sit there with that body and a bunch of people who may or may not be the cause of that body being a body, but they do not, however, force you to engage with the cognitive dissonance normally associated with things like bodies in places that bodies should not be. You don't have to engage with the morality of any of this. We don't have time for that. There's 15 suspects. I'm not saying that you can't ever put yourself in those shoes and you can't ever look at a murder mystery like, and then there were none, and say like, what would I do if I was the butler, and like reflect on your morality. You can. If this channel is about anything, it's about the fact that you can read anything into anything. But like murder mystery whodunits do not do that. Instead, the murder mystery crime thriller fiction noir whodunit genre derives its moral and ethical stance and moral and ethical engagement from the detective's idiosyncratic ethical code. That is what we are engaged with. Ellen O'Gorman writes, "The moral stance in relation to events is articulated through the type of narrative that the detective sees fit to tell about them. The detective, whose ethical code, remember, is an obligation to truth more often than not. It's not psychology, it's not empathy, it's not the status quo, it's truth." One of the other things that you notice in the murder mystery crime thriller genre is that more often than not, as soon as a character announces that they know who the killer is or have found a clue or becomes like a prime suspect, they like immediately end up dead. Look at Clue. This happens to the police officer, dead. The phone guy motorist, dead. One of them is my old boss, right? He says one of them is my old boss, dead. This structure, the fact that people keep dropping dead when they might solve the crime, the fact that the suspect pool gets smaller and smaller, is actively discouraging any kind of moral reflection outside of that presented by the detective. Because if we get too bogged down and distracted by everything else that is going on, all the morality and psychology and blubbering, then we lose sight of the important thing, which is truth. Whodunits actively do not want you to consider your own morality, not because they have the right moral stance, but because it would distract from the form. It would distract from the act of unraveling the mystery, from the narrative that the detective, and by extension the author, is carefully weaving for you as the reader or watcher. The form of the mystery novel depends on communal guilt, both between everybody who is present until the moment we figure out who actually done it, and between you as the reader, the author as the deceiver. Everyone involved in this situation has to remain both guilty and innocent, morally neutral, until the moment that the truth can be revealed. It is Schrodinger's murderer. Where does that leave Clue? The detective story without a detective. Clue is working within a genre where the ultimate obligation is to truth and the moral and ethical code is decided by a singular character, one person who waits until the appropriate moment to tell us exactly what happened and what we should be feeling. One character who tells us the truth. When you write a detective story without a detective, you are taking out the moral center. You're taking out the one singular truth that that character provides. And you are spreading that function of being the moral center, being the truth decider, being the detective across multiple characters. Then that does kind of necessitate having multiple truths. So let's talk about the endings, I guess.
True or false?
True. How are you? Freemason.
So the three endings, right? The first ending that we get is Miss Scarlet having been secretly selling government secrets to the highest foreign bidder, right? She's not a communist.
No, Mr. Green. Communism is just a red herring. Like all members of the oldest profession, I'm a capitalist.
And she orchestrated having Yvette kill everybody else, and then she killed Yvette. And she gets caught because Wadsworth secretly works for the FBI and had her arrested, I think. And this is admittedly the weakest ending. The second ending is that Miss Peacock killed, like, pretty much everyone. We know this because
You told us at dinner that we were eating one of your favorite recipes. And monkey's brains, though popular in Cantonese cuisine, are not often to be found in Washington, D.C.
and communism.
Communism was just a red herring.
Both of those endings are fine, right? They are both sort of fine. They fit the narrative that is presented, and they have like a little bit of a twist. So they're very good. They're good murder mystery endings. They're decent. They do the job. The real ending, however, is the best ending because it doesn't just provide a little bit of a twist. It provides a whole ass twist, a real, genuine twist that you could not have seen coming, no matter how well you know the genre, because everybody fucking did it. Short disclaimer, yes, it is in fact possible that you could have figured it out and guessed that everybody killed somebody, but it was still a bigger twist than the other two, so just let me have my moment. Everybody killed at least one person. I don't remember off the top of my head who killed who for exactly what reason, but we'll put a little diagram and play some clips.
Plum, you knew that Mr. Body was still alive. Even psychiatrists can tell the difference between patients who are alive or dead. So you pretended he was dead. That's how you were able to kill him later. You killed the cook. She used to be your cook. And monkey's brains, though popular in Cantonese cuisine, are not often to be found in Washington, D.C.
Colonel Mustard.
When we saw the motorist at the front door,
Wrench ran to the conservatory.
entered the lounge through the secret passage, killed the motorist with a blow on the head. Like that!
This is incredible!
Not so incredible as what happened next.
Got the rope from the open cupboard and throttled Yvette.
Scarlet seized the opportunity and under cover of darkness crossed to the library where she hit the cop
Whom she'd been bribing
on the head with a lead pipe. True or...
So it must have been Mr. Green who shot the singing telegram.
The gun is missing. Whoever's got the gun shot the girl. But if you want to know who killed Mr. Body, I did. In the hall. With the revolver.
And in line with the fact that the detective's role is spread out to all 6 of our characters, so then is the role of the murderer spread out to all 6 of our characters, which also preserves the integrity of the game in which any character could have done it at any time. None of them suddenly become the canonized murderer in the story of Clue, right? The Clueniverse. Clue, that is a board game and a musical. Yeah, Clue's a musical. They made a Clue musical and they didn't call it Cluesicle the musical. And if you want to hear my thoughts on that nightmare, you will have to subscribe to my Patreon because I don't have time for it now. It's a satisfying ending. Is it a beautiful ending, though? In many ways, yes. Murder, mystery, crime, thriller, whodunits are beautiful in the way that buildings are beautiful. They're beautiful in the way that architecture is beautiful. They're beautiful the way that math is beautiful. Math is a process. It's a thing that you are constantly working on. And Goldman has described a interpretation of aesthetic value that relies on, cognitive engagement in all of our senses, emotional, imaginative, and perceptual. The art of the whodunit is in the discovery, the turning over of leaf after leaf. It's in the deliberate misdirection and confusion, the red herrings, the double narrative. It requires active participation from the reader or watcher. And that is where the value of these stories is. That is where the aesthetic value comes from. This is not a story meant to manipulate your emotions and feelings. It's not meant to better you as a person emotionally and morally. It's meant to engage with you cognitively. It's a puzzle. It is a race. It's you versus the detective versus the author versus the murderer. This is a participatory experience. This is a game. This, however, this is not a pipe. Suspect. Semiotics. Semiotics is the study of signs and symbols and how we derive meaning from the world around us. And the gist of it, more or less, is this. You have a sign, sometimes called a signifier. That is anything that represents or indicates another thing. That other thing is an object. Now, the object can also be called the signified, but that is the thing being represented or indicated. It does not have to be a physical thing. For example, like a red octagon shape, we all kind of know means stop, even if it doesn't say stop on it. That red octagon shape represents the concept of stop. It is the sign to the object. It is the signifier of the signified, which is stop. The painting, this is not a pipe, is often used as an example of, this is a picture of a pipe. It is not an actual pipe. It is a representation of the concept of pipe. What does this have to do with Clue? Let's look at this one moment from Clue, where Wadsworth says that he is going to expose himself.
I was going to expose you.
I know. So I choose to expose myself. Please, there are ladies present.
We know that he is saying, I am choosing to expose myself as the bad guy. We know that without him saying as the bad guy. Colonel Mustard, however, does not. Colonel Mustard, despite having all the same context that we and everybody else in the room has, says this.
Please, there are ladies present.
Colonel Mustard misinterpreted the language that he was given. He misunderstands the reference. And this is not so much a linguistic problem as it is a semiotic one. The two are very related because the question of whether or not words are signs is a thing. So in Clue, Colonel Mustard is interpreting the sign of I am going to expose myself as having a necessary relationship with drop and trow and showing off your helicopter propellers. In reality, though, there is no necessary consequent relationship between exposing yourself and whipping it out in public, because you can expose yourself in many different ways. That is a semiotic tool that is being used to create funny in film, funny on screen, make funny. They're using semiotics to make funny. So later semioticians start to sort of suggest that words themselves are not so much signs with direct equivalent definitions, but rather interpretations. They are a set of instructions. If you hear father, you are being instructed to look around for the child. A set of instructions is also a set of interpretations, and an interpretant is not only a sign which substitutes and translates an earlier sign, it adds something more in some respect and capacity to the sign it interprets. Through the process of interpretation, the context of the first sign grows. To say, like, if I clean the kitchen, that instructs you to interpret that the kitchen had previously been dirty. Clues in the meta context of whodunits are signs and signifiers. They represent something else. Dirty footprint signals to you that a dirty shoe walked there. A missing key indicates to you that somebody stole the key, that there was a key previously. The clues are not just representative of one thing, they are instructions that add to the context of themselves. However, homonyms, I can't think of a single homonym. Oh my God, I need to look up a homonym. This is ridiculous. Think about like wait and wait. The wait was wrong. Do you mean you waited the incorrect amount of time? You weren't supposed to wait that long? You were made to wait longer than you should have been? Or do you mean that the weight of something that you are weighing is incorrect because the scale is broken? Just like you can't establish the meaning of the homonym until it's placed in context, the reader of murder, mystery, whodunit, crime, thriller, fiction, detective things does not know until the end which clues were actual clues, which actually represented something that mattered for the narrative. The clues can't be understood until the end, when everything is explained by, usually, the detective. All of the endings that we get include the fact that communism is a red herring. They include the fact that somebody wasn't there when they were in the kitchen. They include, most of them, the fact that Mrs. Peacock liked that soup. That can either mean that she killed everybody, or it could mean that she killed the cook, or, in the case of Miss Scarlet's ending, it could mean nothing at all, because she didn't kill anyone that time. Clues in the murder mystery whodunit, according to notes on the semiotic analysis of detective novels by Julian Graffi and Iresin, that the detective novel is a construction in which no reality stands behind the sign. The clues might not fucking matter. Look at this exchange between Wadsworth and Colonel Mustard.
Am I right in thinking there is nobody else in this house?
No.
Then there is someone else in this house.
No, sorry. I said no, meaning yes.
No meaning yes? Look, I want a straight answer. Is there someone else or isn't there? Yes or no?
No.
No, there is or no, there isn't?
Yes.
Please!
Well, there is still some confusion as to whether or not there's anybody else in this house.
I told you there isn't.
There isn't any confusion or there isn't anybody else?
Either. Or both.
Just give me a clear answer.
Certainly. What was the question?
Is there anybody else in the house?
No!
Even with the context in that scenario, we don't know what they're fucking talking about. Clue does this several times. It consistently points out to us that we do not understand everything that we are being told.
I'm not the butler, but I'm a butler. In fact, I was his butler.
So if he told you...
It tells us over and over and over again that there are multiple interpretations to everything that is being said.
Well, you tell him it's not true.
It's not true.
Is that true?
No, it's not true.
Ha-ha, so it is true.
A double negative.
Double negative? You mean you have photographs?
That sounds like a confession to me. In fact, the double negative has led to proof positive. I'm afraid you gave yourself away.
Are you trying...
It constantly reminds us that we are not infallible. We are not all-knowing. We are not clear-headed, emotionally detached detectives who can see through all of the rubble. We are 6 guilty people running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And this matters because Clue has 3 endings with 3 plausible explanations. 3 possible, plausible, explainable, justifiable endings built out of the same clues. 3 different contexts built using the same signs and symbols. 3 separate realities constructed out of the same set of signs and symbols. Part 3. Elizabeth sits back and thinks. We know that Clue violates everything that Aristotle said made a good story. And we know that that doesn't matter because Clue is not trying to tell a story that is evoking any kind of specific emotional engagement. It's trying to engage cognitively. However, in having these multiple endings, it is also kind of violating its own format, right? It's kind of violating the rules of a murder mystery whodunit, which is that there should be an answer, one answer. Sure, you can say that one way is how it really happened, but it's no more justifiable or not justifiable than any of the other 2 endings that you gave us. We're supposed to be playing a game. We're supposed to be solving a puzzle, being led very deliberately to a singular answer, a singular truth, because we're human beings and we are full of cognitive dissonances, and we like it when things make sense. We like to watch the cans slide into place. We like to play Tetris. We like to watch things line up and watch things make sense. We are desperate for truth. We participate in the whodunit because we want to know. Always looking for that a priori truth, for what came before. It is not a coincidence that almost every religion and spiritual practice has some kind of creation myth, has some kind of Genesis story, some explanation as to how the hell we got here and what we are doing. Scientists weren't trying to prove the Big Bang happened because they were bored. It's because we want to know. We need to know. It is a natural human response to the absolute uncertainty of the human existence. We can never really, truly, ever possibly know what is going to happen tomorrow. There is no way for us to know with any degree of 100% accuracy a posteriori truths. We can make very, very, very good guesses, right? Like would bet my life on the fact that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. But like if it explodes in the middle of the night, then like I'm fucked, right? And this is the reality that Clue forces us to confront. If you go to a movie and it's a whodunit and you play the game, you engage cognitively with the puzzle that is presented to you, and you get an answer, you get that satisfying answer, and you go to your friend the next day who also saw the movie and they got a different, equally satisfying answer, then what does your answer even mean? What value does your answer even have? None. It has no value. That would be super, super, super fucking frustrating. And I can imagine not recommending anybody else go see that movie. Because if it's not going to satisfy that desperate itch in your stupid little monkey brain, then like, why am I going to recommend anybody else go spend their 25 cents on a movie ticket? I don't know how much movies cost in the 80s. I mean, Clue is a movie that forces you to confront the complex nature of reality and truth. So I can see why people didn't jump on board at first. But if you're cool, if you're, fun and gay and already existentially confused and forced to confront the cognitive dissonances in your reality anyway, and you rent this movie out at the VHS rental store because nobody else has taken it out because everybody else is stressed about it, you are probably going to fucking love it. And that is Clue. Clue is not just a departure from traditional storytelling structure. It is a departure from traditional whodunit structure. It's a departure from the whole whodunit genre in general. It specifically plays on all of the tropes that people who love whodunits and murder mysteries are already familiar with. It takes all of the things that we're expecting, all of the rules of the game that we already know, and throws them off the side of the yacht. It does not give a shit. I mean, it laughs in the face of its own format. It is hilarious and really, really fun if you know the rules of the genre. But like, not everybody who played Clue once or twice as a kid went on to continue to read and love mystery novels. I fucking loved Clue. I was a monster at Clue when that game came out. I destroyed it. Several wars were started. Multiple international conflicts erupted as a result of my playing Clue. But like, apart from the time I drove her getaway car, Agatha Christie and I are just not on the same page. So there is a decent chance that a lot of the people who went to go see Clue on that fateful December day in 1985, there is a Venn diagram of people who know and are familiar with the Clue franchise and people who know and are familiar with the rules of the genre it is based on. It's a large Venn diagram, but it's a Venn diagram filled with nerdy little book dorks cozied up by a fire reading. They're not going to the fucking movies, okay? So it flops at the box office because The camera died. We're back to my phone, but this is the home stretch. It flopped because Sarah and her girlfriend were too busy cozied up, playing Clue, being cute little gay nerds to get out to the movie theater. You know who was free enough to go to the movie theater? Boring people, critics, people who read literature, people who like French New Wave, people who are too wrapped up in the value of emotional engagement to sit down and think about aesthetics in a different way. People who like to be the smartest person in the room. People who are too pretentious and too prideful to be willing to be beaten. They don't like to lose to the literature that they are reading. They don't want to miss signs and symbols. They don't want to engage with signs and signifiers that have no reality. People for whom the whale could never have been just a whale. So if you take all of these people who, study aesthetic value, who've studied this literature and who are writing critiques, and you present them with something that plays explicitly on the tropes of what they consider to be the scum of literary genres, right? The trash, empty calories, junk food of literature, then yeah, they're going to be super fucking snobby about it. But if you put that shit on DVD and you send it off to all the nerds, and you send it off to all the little queers running around in the 90s, all of the people who spent the 80s being, 5 to 15 years old reading choose your own adventure novels, if you give this movie to them, they're gonna fucking love it. And that is Clue. Clue came out the same year they changed the recipe for Coca-Cola, and we were too traumatized as a society to deal with that. Truth be told, I couldn't really come up with the third one, but this is my video on Clue. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed that little section that was filmed in 4K. Where is my cat is going after this camera? I hope you enjoyed the section that was filmed on this. I have a camera now. Wild. I don't really know how to use it, but we'll figure it out. I was only able to purchase this camera on Black Friday because of the support of you guys watching this video and my Patreon supporters, which the difference in just the few hours that I was filming with this is insane. It makes it go so much faster. I am so grateful. Speaking of Patreon, the sources and bibliography for this whole video will be on my Patreon for free. You do not have to be a subscriber to see the resources. They are completely free to everybody. If you do want to sign up to my Patreon, however, you can see the exclusive video that I recorded about Clue the musical, because it's bonkers and I couldn't fit it all in here. And there are several other reasons why I can't put it on here, but I hope you enjoyed this. I am very excited about my next couple videos. Some of them I have been working on for over a year. It's gonna be very, very fun. And yeah, thank you for this incredible year. I hope this comes out before the end of the year. If this doesn't come out before the end of December, this is gonna be ridiculous, but thank you for this incredible year. January was kind of when my videos started to get some traction, and things have changed very quickly and very rapidly since then. And I've been able to do so many things that I didn't think I would ever be able to do. And I'm just incredibly grateful to have been given this opportunity and to have had such a wonderful year with all of you. And yeah, so let me know what you would like me to make videos about. Let me know your thoughts, and let me know your favorite character in Clue. What is your favorite ending to Clue? I would love to know. Okay, that's it. Bye!
I prefer Kipling myself. You like Kipling, Miss Scarlett?
Sure, I'll eat anything.
Well, he just lies around on his back all day.
Sounds like hard work to me.
They know who I am?
I don't think so. You've never identified yourself to them, I believe.
I came into money during the war when I lost my mommy and daddy. Rough. Put him up. Put him down.
Who would want to kill the cook?
Dinner wasn't that bad.
How can you make jokes at a time like this?
It's my defense mechanism.
Some defense. If I was the killer, I would kill you next. I'll catch him. Fall into my arms. Ladies first.
No thanks.
The door's locked.
I know.
Then unlock it.
Where's the key?
The key's gone. Never mind about the key. Unlock the door.
I can't unlock the door without the key. Let us in. Let us in. Let us out. Let us out.
Go.
You're a communist.
No, Mr. Green. Communism is just a red herring.
I hated her so much. Flames on the side of my face.
I did. In the hall. With the revolver. Okay, Chief, take him away. I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife.